see you all here, and good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to the webinar. We presented this information before the pandemic, and it was very well received. We thought we would repeat the program. My name is Annette Reynolds. I am a real estate broker and agent with Team Impressa, and we're just having a wonderful time. The objective today is to highlight the options that folks have when making some really big decisions. Most importantly, we strongly suggest that you do your homework, speak to experts such as financial advisors, lawyers, and accountants to assure you have all the information you need to make informed decisions. My business partner, Lynn, who was one of the panelists today, and I are in our 70s. I guess that's okay to say that, isn't it, Lynn?
The truth hurts. What are you gonna do?
We've worked together for almost a decade in one capacity or another. And we were speaking one day a couple of years ago about whether or not we should stay in our homes. I've been in mine for 20 years. She's been in hers even longer. Or if we should move into something that required less of us, either physically or financially. And ironically, we chose two different paths. So this discussion, well, it started with a whole bunch of questions. If I stay in my home, what can I do to make it easier to live here? If I stay in my home, how can I access my home's equity? If I sell my home, what do I do with all of my stuff? We all have stuff. If I sell my home, will I have capital gains tax to worry about? If I sell my home, what housing options do I have? Can I find another home in today's real estate market? How big of a hassle is this? And if I have to buy before I can sell, what's the best way to finance the purchase before getting the equity out of my home? And if I sell my home before I buy, how can I coordinate everything so I don't end up homeless, even for a couple of days or a few weeks? So Lynn,
Yeah.
why don't you start us off by telling us about your experience when you moved from Chestnut Hill to Wayland?
Well, we were in the same home in Chestnut Hill for over 30 years. And there was nothing wrong with it, except that as we worked toward our retirement plan, we really wanted to simplify. We wanted to financially simplify so that we could do anything we wanted to do without making substantial lifestyle changes. And my husband was really resistant. He doesn't make change. I'm the risk taker of the two of us. He was not in favor of a change, and he actually made a bet with me and said, well, Lynn, if you can get X for this place, then I'll move, because X meant he could put several $100,000 in the bank toward retirement. And speak of the devil, he's leaving the room. And I think he never thought I could do it. But I am, in fact, a real estate broker. I did know the market, and I shocked him by getting him more than what he thought we could get. So then I had to call his bluff. I thought it was going to be so easy. It wasn't. Getting rid of, I opened my cupboards to start to pack, and it was overwhelming. 5 sets of dishes, some of which were, I considered heirlooms, stuff, furniture I didn't want to move. I found the process exhausting. And if you're like me, one spouse is more adaptable than the other. And my husband was freaking out about where he was going to go for breakfast. I mean, he just didn't manage it well. So it was, in fact, hard for somebody in my industry. And that's what led us to a day like today, because it shouldn't have been so hard. I should have had, boy, MJ, I wish I knew you then. Okay. I managed it on my own. I was really exhausted. So part of the goal that we have for today is to put together some resources for our audience and answer some questions. It's really not about our being in a sales pitch mode, right, Annette? It's really about sharing resources with you and information with you that helps you make good decisions for yourself. As Annette said, she chose to stay put.
Oh, yeah. And
So there you
I'll
go.
tell you why. I'll tell you why. My house is paid for. It's the 13th house I've lived in since I have been married. I won't move again. And while the house isn't particularly large, it's a gathering and living place for our family, including my grandkids. My grandkids are all within 40 minutes from here, and we see them all regularly. So I'm staying put. It's as simple as that. Yeah, a lot of the issues that you found, Lynn, when you were working with your stuff, I found out every time we moved for each 13 times. Okay, so I'm not going to do it again. But when folks speak to us about downsizing, there are generally two different scenarios. In the first scenario, the house is too large, takes too much money, too much effort to maintain, and creates challenges if you want to go and take a long vacation or spend the summer someplace else, winterizing the house, making sure nothing happens. And also, with all that room, guess what? The kids and the other relatives feel free to visit, creating more work for you. And the other thing is systems could use upgrading. They're getting old. I realized just this weekend, my air conditioning system's 20 years old. And I've got a plan to replace it it's working, it's fine, within the next couple of years. So for folks who are looking to get out of too big a place, they have a couple of options. One is just to buy a smaller house, smaller home. Frequently it's a condo. Maintenance and other services are performed by others. And sometimes it's a home in a less expensive community. Or it could be a continuous care type facility, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Another option is to just rent. I have friends who've done this. They don't want anything to do with maintaining. They've got enough money in the bank. They want to have somebody take care of the headaches. And they may decide to buy later or go someplace else. And if you decide you want to relocate, it's a month's notice and you're out of there. So it's very convenient for some. Some folks move in with the kids.
Eek.
Well, that's what you had to live with.
No.
You were transitioning.
Never.
I've had all of my kids come in and live with us at one time or another. And so I would go live with them just so they would suffer never mind. Okay. The second scenario is staying in your home. And this, again, is a very valid option for my husband and me. There are no issues, period. However, as some people age, they become limited physically. Stairs can become very problematic. And there are worries about stability, physical stability, particularly in the bathroom. I saw a meme once on Facebook that says, what scares me most about falling in the bathroom is that the firefighters are going to see me without my clothes on. Okay, so a little bit of stability there is a good thing. So let's go back to the initial list of questions. If I stay in my home, what can I do to make it easier to live here? Stairs. If they're problematic, there are several ways to address that. A stair lift. Take you from here to there. It's very safe. They're not horribly expensive either. I did some pricing. If it's a single flight of stairs, it's about $2,000 to get a stair lift. If it's more complicated around some corners, second flight, it could run up to $4,000 or $5,000. But if it enables you to stay in your home, it's a relatively inexpensive way to do that and to be safe. A more expensive alternative is to put in an elevator. And I have some people say, what? Well, some homes are not amenable to that. They don't have the space, they don't have the style where you can do it, but some homes are. And it's worth considering because it does add great value to your home. Some homes like mine can be reconfigured, turning the den into a bedroom, for example, or the family room. My office, where I'm speaking from now, was originally a bedroom. And in my plan B, if I don't want to make the steps, is to turn this back into a bedroom with the bathroom right next door and the kitchen right next door. I don't know what else you need in life than that. And again, in the bathroom, grab bars, or even a new type of bath where you don't have to climb in, where the risk of falling is so much lower. Back to our original list of questions. If I stay in my home, can I use my home's equity to improve the home, to hire people to do the stuff I don't want to do, or maybe just go take a nice vacation? How can I do that? Well, again, you have options. A line of credit secured by your home will provide liquidity. My husband Fred and I did this just a couple of years ago. The cost was low to get it, about $100. The annual fee to maintain it is $75. And if I withdraw the funds, the interest rate's just about prime rate. So the cost really isn't very high. However, when you apply for a line of credit, the lender, it's a mortgage, essentially. The lender wants to make sure you can pay it back. And so you have to document sufficient income to satisfy the underwriters. If you're working, as we are, that wasn't a problem. If you're retired, again, they're going to want to see how can you pay the money back if you can afford it. And if you're retired and just living a moderate lifestyle, that may be a challenge. So it's frustrating to have all that value in your home, but be unable to easily access it. I have a solution. Let me introduce David Tortolot. David makes his living by helping folks obtain reverse mortgages on their homes. David, why don't you introduce yourself to the group and tell us what you do?
Thanks, Annette. Yes, once again, I'm Dave Tortolot. I specialize exclusively in reverse mortgage financing and have been for almost 15 years now. And it's a unique home mortgage. It's important to know that it's just a mortgage. A lot of people think it's something from outer space, and it's just a home loan. And everybody's pretty familiar with FHA. So this mortgage falls under the FHA umbrella. It just happens to be for older homeowners. So there's an age requirement. You have to be a minimum of 62 years or older to qualify. Has to be your primary residence, and you have to have some equity in the house. Generally speaking, about 50% or more. If you're on the older end of the spectrum, maybe you have about 40% equity or more. The house does not have to be mortgage free. That's a misconception. People think that you can't take out a reverse mortgage if you currently have mortgage liens on the property. One of the most popular ways for my clients is to actually switch their mortgages they have or refinance into a reverse mortgage, and it eliminates them having to be strapped to a mortgage payment the first of every month. Because when you switch it to a reverse mortgage or refinance it, there's no more payment obligation. You can make payments on reverse mortgages, but you're not obligated to make payments. So to your point in that, if someone wants to stay in their house long-term, that's a key thing. If someone wants to stay in their house long-term, a reverse mortgage is worth learning about. Not necessarily going to be the right option. It's circumstantial. So everybody's circumstances are different. A home equity line of credit could be a better option. A cash out refinance through one of our speakers, Andrew Marquis, could be a better option. It just depends on their circumstances. So if someone wants to stay in their house, and let's say that they're more house rich and cash poor, meaning they have very limited savings, most of their net worth is tied up in the equity in their house, then this is something that might be a good tool for them if they want to age in place and they need to access resources to do things like make bathrooms handicap accessible, put in stair lifts, things like that. There's many applications for reverse mortgages, but there's hundreds of them actually. But if someone wants to stay in their house, you're just opening up the equity in your house using a reverse mortgage. And when you set up this loan, you can structure the loan in the form of a reverse equity line of credit, very much like a home equity line of credit, and access the money when you need it. So if you take it out and set it up and you want to hire a contractor to install bars in the bathroom or a stair lift or a ramp out front, you hire the contractor, you transfer the money from the line of credit into your checking account, pay the contractor. The good news there is every month you get a statement, but the statement doesn't include a payment. So the interest defers. That's why they call it a reverse mortgage. The balance of a reverse mortgage, when you borrow the money, goes in the opposite direction of a regular mortgage. It defers the interest. If you don't like it deferring the interest, you can make payments on a reverse mortgage. It's just like a home equity line of credit. You can cover the interest and have the loan be neutral, or you can pay more than the interest and have it behave like a traditional mortgage, like Andrew Marquis offers. Or you can make no payments at all. The good news is that it's so flexible that you can come up with your own terms. If you want to make no payments on the reverse mortgage at all, ever, that's fine. If you want to make no payments on the reverse mortgage this year, that's fine, and then begin making payments next year, that's fine too. If you want to make the due dates up on your own every month or whenever you want to pay it, it's all up to you. All the terms are up to the homeowner, but you're never responsible for making mortgage payments.
Well, what type of costs are involved? Because you have to get paid, the lender, the bank needs to get paid. What does it cost? Or do I just say, David, I want a reverse mortgage, and you just write me a check for whatever we
Yeah,
count?
no, that's a great question. So the costs are tied to the home's value. So the lower your home value, the less the costs are to take out a reverse mortgage because it's risk-based.
Mhm.
So if you have $1 million home and you're able to borrow 50% of that, it's more risky for HUD to maybe have to absorb that loan in the future if the home's upside down. So they charge more for someone with a higher valued home. If it's on the lower end of the values, then it's less expensive. So it's a fixed percentage of the home's value. So let's just take someone who has a $500,000 house. What's it going to cost for them to get a reverse mortgage? Roughly about 20 grand. And that includes the upfront mortgage insurance. That's 2% of the home value. That's 10 grand. There's an origination fee that's standardized and set by HUD. That's 6 grand. It's capped at 6 grand. And then there's the refinance fees that an attorney charges, your recording fees, the title examination, all that other stuff. You record 2 mortgages and notes with a reverse mortgage because HUD backs it. So you sort of have a ghost lien behind the bank's mortgage. So it's more expensive. Yes, it's a more expensive loan, but it can't be compared to any other mortgage out there because all other mortgages in the country have mortgage payments.
So I think you told me once it could be rolled into the loan as well.
Yeah, the costs are rolled into the loan. So they're subtracted from your loan that you can borrow first, and then any liens thereafter are extinguished with the rest of the money. And if those are extinguished and there's more money left, then that can be just be set up in a line of credit or set up as a monthly payment and a line of credit, or just a monthly payment, or just a line of credit.
Lots of options.
Lots of options. As
Now,
many
what
ways to-
happens if I decide to leave the home? If I decide to move into with one of my kids?
Yeah, when all the borrowers that take out the mortgage, if it's a married couple, one predeceases the other, nothing happens to the loan until the last surviving homeowner leaves the house permanently. But let's just use your example. If you're the only borrower and you leave the home permanently, the loan is due. If you are moving into an assisted living facility after you have the reverse mortgage, the loan becomes due 12 months after you leave your home. If you pass away, the loan becomes due right away, but it comes with timelines. So if the estate's going to sell it, you get 6 months from date of death initially to sell it. And then if it doesn't sell within that time frame, the estate can apply for 2 90-day extensions thereafter. So you get up to a year, but you get the year in increments, 6 months, 3 months, 3 months.
Okay. Now, I had somebody tell me that I could buy a home with a reverse mortgage. Is that so?
That's true, yeah. A lot of people think that you can only take a reverse mortgage out as a refinance against the house that you live in. But I have clients that I meet with, and in your example earlier, the house is big and they've recently lost their spouse. So I would bring up the option of, hey, have you thought of selling? Because this seems like an awfully big house based on your income and your circumstances to maintain. And if they're open to that, we'll talk about the reverse mortgage for purchase. So think of it like this. Everybody knows what a mortgage is to refinance their house, and everybody knows what a mortgage is to buy a house. It works the same. So if you want to sell the house you're in and downsize, or even make a lateral move or upsize, you can sell that house, figure out the net proceeds, and then look at what the math is going to be on the next house you're buying. Some of the money you're netting out on the house you're selling will be used as a down payment, and the rest of the money will be taken out in the form of a reverse mortgage for purchase against that new house. And so you're taking a mortgage out on the next house, but there's no mortgage payment on the house you're buying. The benefit of buying a house with a reverse mortgage for a retiree is that most of them think that if they sell their house, they have to take all of the money and buy the next house cash to not have a mortgage payment. So this is where a reverse mortgage for purchase comes in, because if they're netting out, say, $500,000 and they're buying a $500,000 house, a new house, and let's say the reverse mortgage is $250,000, well, they only need $250 from the $500,000 they just netted out from the house they sold. So they have $250 left in the bank to live on and have the new house that is more appropriate for their needs with no mortgage payment on it. So that's how it works, but it's got a lot of value.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, it's a lot of information, Dave, a lot of good information, and it's nice to know so that we can counsel our clients about.
Annette, I'm monitoring the chat bar, and I have a question for David.
Oh, sure.
I'll just read it. It says, I always thought these things were a scam. Why do I think that?
Yeah, well, you're not alone. I thought they were a scam too when I was introduced in 2002, when someone approached me and asked me if I did them. First thing I said was, oh, I would stay away from those things. I didn't even know why I was saying that. It's not a scam. I'll tell you why people have the stigmas in their head. Reverse mortgages, believe it or not, have been around since the 60s and 70s. They were just unregulated reverse mortgages. And so HUD and FHA, Housing and Urban Development, Federal Housing Administration, in the late 80s during the Reagan administration, they liked the concept of reverse mortgages, but they wanted to invent a regulated reverse mortgage. So they invented it and introduced it to the marketplace, the financial institutions, in the 90s, and the product got misused because it's a very vulnerable demographic that it's used for. When I say it got misused, is it was set up by people like me, not me per se, but originators. And then they would cross-sell and extract the money out of the house after the reverse mortgage was set up and invest the money in annuities and buy all kinds of crazy financial instruments with it. And that wasn't the mission and the idea when FHA invented it. Their mission statement was take the loan out, provide financial stability for a long period of time. Not take the loan out and buy Bitcoin with it, buy boats, go on vacation, have someone persuade you into buying financial instruments with it. That's what gave it the bad name. But you cast forward to now, and there's many disclosures in place now because of all the bad actors that were misusing the loan. And so it's really 32 years later now, the loan's been around and available. It's the most transparent mortgage I've ever seen. When I print out my application, it's 298 pages. 2/3 of that just stays behind with the borrower after they sign the application, so they know what they're getting into. So it's not a scam. It's a federally regulated home mortgage for older homeowners. And it's overseen by HUD. HUD makes all the rules. Any bank that offers it they just have the HUD rule book. All the underwriters have the same rule book. So there's no overlays, there's no exceptions. It's backed and insured by HUD. It was the loans in the 60s and 70s, the reverse mortgages that were very expensive, more expensive than the HUD loan. And so I know that's a long answer, but just trying to hit all the points.
Okay. Answer your question, Lynn. I guess
Wasn't
it's
mine.
That's
I
okay.
hope,
Andrew,
please go back in the chat bar and tell me your question was answered.
Andrew, you had a question.
Oh, I inadvertently answered, raised my hand. I'm good.
Okay.
Dave did a wonderful job explaining it. So.
Thank you so much, David.
You're
Okay. Let's go back to our questions. What do I do with all of my stuff? Lynn, what did you do?
I'll tell you, it was overwhelming. I have a friend who is a part-time, well, no, she's a very organized person and she helped me. She's not really an organizer, but she had some resources. So she showed up at my house and I laughed with 5 different colors of masking tape on her arm. And she made me sit on the couch and we looked at every single thing in my house and labeled it. Is it coming with me? Is it given away? We have kids. Is this going to the kids? What do we want to do? And that helped at least put a name on it. But then I still had, oh my God, all my cupboards were emptied into my living room. You couldn't walk. And it was a little overwhelming. So I was lucky enough. I think one of our staging resources sent me to a place that would come and take anything I didn't want and put it in their consignment shop. And if it didn't sell in 60 days, they would send it to charity and I'd get the deduction.
Okay.
So it felt really good to get it out of the house. I ended up, as you know, I gave everything away. I really didn't need a moving truck except for my personal things and my grandmother's china. I started over.
Yeah.
Much to my husband's dismay.
Well, you know, this is an issue regardless of how old we are. You know, I mentioned I've moved 13 times since I've been married, and I had an unwritten rule. If a box wasn't opened in 2 moves, I could throw it out because I didn't need it.
I still have a few boxes in my basement that I haven't opened, so maybe it's time to toss them. I don't know.
Well, you know, the challenge of stuff is not limited just to those who are moving. But my favorite solution is to call my friend MJ. I tell folks to call her. MJ Rosenthal, her life purpose is to help us get organized, or more specifically, and I took this from your website, MJ, I love it, helping people create customized balance between space, belongings, and time. She's a marvel at this. More importantly, she's seen it all and helps so many. MJ, tell us more about what you do, how you do it, and how you can help me when I help my husband when they carry me out of here.
Well, I wanted to thank you and Lynn for putting this together. And David, your information was just great. I've learned so much just sitting here in this webinar. So thank you, ladies, for including me. And I am so glad that you both shared your experience of what it's like to make decisions, to downsize, and the feelings that you experienced, because letting our clients know it's not unusual to feel completely overwhelmed going through these big decisions, especially when it involves removing everything from a closet or a cupboard, and then it ends up in the middle of your living room. And I love the tape idea, but that still doesn't relieve the overwhelm. And what I do is I help those clients relieve the overwhelm. I come in with help them create that plan of action so they don't feel overwhelmed. So we do know how this is going to look from start to finish. They don't have to do it alone. It's really tough to do it alone, as you know. I also have a getting ready to downsize story, and I have a small 2-bedroom condo, and I was preparing to maybe go to market this fall, and I had to go through the steps that my clients went through, and I was just as overwhelmed as everybody else is. I hired my colleagues to come in and really help me take a step back, create that objectivity, and a really solid plan of action, including logistics. What am I going to do with this? How am I going to get rid of it? Can I get any money for it? Is it a freebie? Do I sell it? Do I give it away? What if I have multiple children and I have a complicated situation around who gets what? What if I'm moving from here to temporary and then to final? What does that look like? What does storage look like? All of those pieces of the puzzle, I absorb and create a plan for the client so I can help them move through those stages. And depending on how complicated it is, there may be more stages than just moving from this house to that house. But we take the overwhelmed out of that process.
I have to give you kudos. I know we recently sent you, I guess I can say this because we're not sharing her name, but we sent you one of our more neurotic clients. Okay, who was in a small condo and really had everything she'd ever owned was still there in there with her. And she was paralyzed, completely paralyzed. And we weren't sure how we were going to help her make her goal a reality. She had a pretty, she had a strong goal. She knew what she wanted to do, but she couldn't get it done. And somehow you calmed her down. Annette and I were ready to run as far away as we could get. And you were an amazing calming influence to get it done. So thank you for that. We're still friends with her today because you helped, you know?
Well,
It's not unusual for people to feel that type of overwhelmed, as we talked about as part of this, and whether we are good at this, like I like to think that I am, or we struggle with executive function and making decisions, having somebody come in and really create that path for you, lets you know you aren't going to need to feel that anxiety because we have a decision for everything that feels like it's outstanding. It allows my colleagues to focus on what they need to do while I can take the clients into my arms and gently lead them through a strategic process of how they either keep or get rid of items.
well, one of the things that I know about MJ is that she has a coaching background, and being able to coach clients through the process rather than saying you should do this, you should do that, or you should do the other, makes it a process that works well for everybody and keeps the temperature down in the whole transaction.
So there's another, go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I apologize. Go ahead, Lynn.
No, there is another note in the chat bar. And by the way, some of our attendees are other agents on the Team Impressa roster. And one of them has said, I have a client who I would consider a veritable hoarder. Is this something you can help with? I could not walk through her home. There wasn't an empty spot on the floor. Can you help?
It's a great question. It depends if they are truly a hoarder. And there's an actual scale that I share with clients around chronic disorganization and hoarding that we can evaluate whether the client's saying that and being dramatic. We all say, I'm a hoarder, I have so much stuff, don't look in my bedroom, or if it's really the case. I'm working with a client now where I'm inventorying all of her belongings, 900 purses, over 1,500 pairs of shoes. I'm not kidding about this. And she has no problem making decisions, but I couldn't walk through her house. She wasn't a hoarder, and she got rid of all of her memories and paper, but we just have to inventory the clothing and the belongings. So I would have a conversation with the individual. It's not my specialty working with hoarders. When it's truly a hoarding situation, there should be a team of people, including some emotional support, either a social worker or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, a removal company, and then an experienced organizer who has worked in these areas before, and it just doesn't happen to be my vein, but I would absolutely connect anyone that came to me with the right resources to support their needs.
Actually, Annette, you and I have worked with a true hoarder and such a team.
Yeah.
Divorce attorney, social worker, psychiatrist, moving strong kids who could move stuff out, and us. And it took us how long to get that house on the market?
6 months.
Yeah.
6 months. Well, MJ, you are such a wonderful, valuable resource, and I will continue to refer people to you. And if you go to the Team Impressa website, we did an in-depth interview a few months ago, and that's up there as well. Okay, let's get back to our questions. If I sell my home, will I owe capital gains tax? Well, possibly. The government will ask for tax on any capital gain above $250,000 per individual or $500,000 per married couple. And this is all I'm going to say, because this is not my area of expertise. I'd hate to provide incomplete or incorrect information, but I will provide some advice. Whenever planning a major change in your life, reach out to the experts who will provide information that will enable you to weigh the options and then make the best decision for you and your family. This includes a good financial advisor who can review your financial positions and your goals and make appropriate recommendations. An accountant who can explain the tax consequences of your options. And a lawyer who will help with instruments that give you maximum control of your life, such as trusts, wills, powers of attorney, advanced healthcare directive, living wills, HIPAA authorization forms, a lot of stuff that people don't think about, but when a catastrophic event happens, you wonder why you didn't take care of it before. And it's not selling real estate, it's just being real about life. Now, Lynn and I know a number of people in these areas, so don't hesitate to ask us for a recommendation. I'm going to get back to my questions. If I sell my home, what housing options do I have? Have you folks seen Nomadland or read the book?
It was great.
Yeah, the plot deals with people who live in movable homes, such as travel trailers and converted vans. And I said to Lynn, haven't you ever thought you wanted to get yourself into one of these big buses or campers and just go and not have to be any place at any time? And she says to me, yeah, I want to live like Jack Reacher does. You know, I don't wash my clothes, I buy new ones. I get on the bus and I go to the next place. And there's a certain draw to that freedom of not being tied to a place. But I think that's more a dream or a short-term reality for some people who find they want to be more permanent someplace. Now, some people prefer to rent. They can use this as the way they're going to continue living, or a short-term accommodation until they get to where they want to go. Other people will look at a continuous care residential community where different levels of support are available. My mother-in-law was in one of these. You go into an independent living place. You're there with all the other seniors. Sometimes they're standalone condos. Sometimes they're in a building like almost like a hotel, actually, because they have the dining rooms and everything else there. If you find that you need assisted living, it's within the same facility. Memory care, within the same facility. Nursing home, within the same facility. And once you're in there, you're guaranteed accessibility to these others. Many opt for a townhouse, a condominium, where they have ownership. It could be a townhouse. It could be a senior complex. Garden style, steps or elevator. There are just so many choices out there and available amenities. You want a swimming pool? You want a tennis court, doorman, in-unit laundry? So there are many options if that's where you want to go. I'm sorry, I saw a question come up and I got distracted there. So when you're thinking of going and purchasing another property, we'll sit down and do an intense needs analysis. What really do you want? And what can you afford? And let's go find that for you.
That's where we come in, right?
Well, my next question, if you sell my home, can I find another home in today's real estate market? How big of a hassle is that, Lynn?
Well, for some, I mean, we're in the most sustained period of real estate slanted toward the seller that I can remember in my 25 years in the business. It won't stay this way forever. And we've had terrific success getting our buyers into properties because we set expectations way up front and tell them what to expect and have real dialogue about the fact that if your budget is 600, we're going to look in the fives because you're going to have to add some extra money on. There are ways to beat this system if you work with smart people. So what I would say to you is that even if it isn't Annette or me, work with somebody who really will take good care of you and guide you through this process, because it isn't easy out there, but it's very doable. It's really important, I think, more than ever. I think a lot of people think that they can go it alone and maybe save some commission. And the truth is that there's no saving the commission. It goes someplace and not to you. Everybody wants a piece of it, and there's nobody guiding you through the process. So pick a great agent, even if it should be us, but even if it isn't, that's okay.
The truth is, we're helping our buyers get into their homes.
It's really about investing our time and our energy in meeting their goals and explaining to everybody what they have to do to make that real.
If I buy before I sell, even for a few days, what's the best way to finance the purchase before getting the equity out of my home? I'm going to introduce you to a good friend, Andrew Marquis. He is the go-to person for our team because his team takes good care of us. They take good care of our clients. They're available every day. Sunday evenings, I'm talking to one of them if I have to. They're responsive and they close on time. But Andrew, at the risk of sounding elementary, I'm going to ask you to give a high-level overview of the mortgage process. Just back to basics, because the mortgage process today is different than it was 10 years ago, and really a lot different than when many of our audience members bought their home the last time they got a mortgage. What documents are required for a pre-approval, for a commitment? How long does the process take? And then I'm going to ask you to dive into what happens if I need a bridge loan, and are they still available?
Thank you so much for having me, Annette, and great to hear all the awesome information from MJ, Lynn, David, yourself. It's been such a great seminar so far. So yeah, I think the key to people's understanding about the process nowadays, Annette, is to get pre-approved. There's a lot of documentation required. We do have systems set up where the client can upload documents. They can apply online if they're comfortable with that. We still absolutely meet with clients face-to-face, so clients can drop by documents, they can mail them. So really whatever fashion suits you, but really it's a matter of, us providing a list of documentation we need and really getting all those documents, it makes it easy for us. Typically what we're looking for is maybe like last 2 years of tax returns, last couple months of asset statements, which would be investment, bank, retirement statements. That's really the bulk of it. If the client's on a fixed income, we're going to see the income going through their bank account. If they're still working, we might ask for W-2s. If they're self-employed, we see that income on their tax returns. But I think where clients get caught up in the process is they try to think logically about it and they get into the, well, why do you need this or why do you need that? And it gives us on the mortgage side no pleasure whatsoever asking someone for a document that we ultimately don't need. We don't have the time for it. I'd have no interest in it. So it's really more just, there's certain checks and balances in the mortgage process that have to be met for that loan to go through. The government gives us certain, documents that we need to have in that file when it gets audited. So it's really, a lot of it can seem illogical to, the mortgage you took out 30 years ago was, Bob, the president of the bank, knows I'm a good guy, knows my family, has a good feeling that I'll pay my mortgage loan. We had a great, round of golf, so he's going to give me a mortgage. Now it's very much more of like an automated process. In some ways you're a number. I hear people say, oh, well, I have a great relationship with, XYZ bank, and it's some, worldwide bank. And I say, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but, they're working with billions of clients or, tens of millions of clients. And, really at the end of the day, it's a fairly automated process with a lot of different loan programs. And as long as you have a strong loan advisor to guide you, let you know what you need, you're going to get your loan, you're going to close on time. And I think, for this seminar, where I can probably add the most value is when you have clients transitioning to buy, whether they're buying up or for the most part, I think downsizing here, we can help them with financial tools to allow them to buy before they sell. So, David's option is fabulous, the reverse mortgage. I used to work with David, I don't know what, about probably 8-9 years ago now, David, if you can remember, but
Let's do it.
all he does is reverse mortgage loans. So, in the 8-9 years since I've worked with David, I still refer every single client that needs a reverse mortgage to David because that's his specialty. He just does that one thing. And so if you have a client that really wants one of those loans where they don't have to make a payment, but still hang on to a bunch of cash, have an annuity, that's a fabulous option. From a bridging standpoint, Annette, depending on clients' financial means, if they still have a good income or if they still have significant assets, they might be retired. I know Lynn and I are working on a client right now that has a low income, but they're buying a different property. I think it's like a lakefront property, Lynn. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing is we're actually using their assets to establish an income. So we're saying they have a certain amount of assets. It's can be referred to as asset depletion, but we look at the amount of assets they have and what they could actually tap on a monthly basis for an income to be able to buy that next property before they sell their current property. So that's one sort of bridging technique that we're using. Now they have down payment money, but they still need some loan to acquire that property before they list their current property. So it helps the client to be able to have some overlap where they don't have to move twice, and also be able to buy a property not contingent on selling their current property, which can be very challenging in the current market. The other thing a lot of times that we do is we do arrange loans for them to tap the equity in their existing property before they sell it. And that could be a refinance if they plan to keep the property long term. So we have them in a fixed rate. If they're just planning for it to be a short term, we might do an equity line of credit where they can tap into some of that equity, use it for a down payment to buy before they sell. Like I always say when we talk about this, and that every client scenario is very much unique. So like what might work for one client might not for another. It all depends on what they're trying to accomplish and what their financial means are to meet that objective. Kind of like David was saying, he might do a purchase loan for one client. He might do a cash out refi for another one. He might do an annuity payment on this one. So it's really important. And that's what I love about this team, MJ, Annette, Lynn. We're all looking at each particular scenario and coming up with the most appropriate solution for that client. Again, I appreciate you having me as a part of the panel today. And if there's other questions I can elaborate on, I'm always happy to.
Okay. So there is a question in the chat bar. If my parent, and I guess somebody's on whose folks are thinking of downsizing, my parents are living on fixed income. They're afraid of a reverse mortgage. And frankly, as their kid, I don't like the idea of it because the asset is depleted. Is there any way to get them moved by tapping their equity if they're not working and their income's fixed?
You're asking to get a conventional mortgage instead of a reverse, Lynn?
Mm-hmm. I think that was the question.
Yeah, so, I would definitely, again, I think, there's so many misconceptions about the reverse mortgage. So I would absolutely, the nice thing again about this team is having an exploratory conversation with one of us doesn't commit you to anything. So like having a conversation with David about the reverse mortgage, and the reason I say that is when you describe that individual, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, but if we have an individual with very low assets and almost no income, that almost seems like a perfect candidate for a reverse mortgage, right?
Yeah, no, that's correct.
Yeah,
If they want to
so
stay,
I would look at their situation, Lynn, and I would evaluate. What they say I have not much income or I have not much assets is a relative term. They might have a ton of assets, or I have people that say, oh, I have significant assets, and they've saved 80,000 in their retirement account in 40 years, right? So it all depends, but I think we'd evaluate that. I think that we're very creative too. So I think if there is any solution to be had or to be made there, I think either David or myself is going to have a solution for that client.
So the answer really is make a phone call to one or both of you and figure it out. Good.
That works.
it doesn't hurt to learn about something, even if you think, reverse mortgage isn't the right thing. I would say 95% of the time I meet with families and kids, there's probably 5 or 6 instances where they say, really? Aha, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize the bank didn't own the house. I didn't realize the estate wasn't liable for the mortgage debt. So again, it doesn't hurt to learn about it. Like Andrew just said, it's just a conversation. And my recommendation might not be that the reverse is the correct tool for them. It's just a tool. I offer a tool. Andrew offers a lot more tools than I do. I offer one tool, but it's a tool. So it depends on which tool is going to be the best solution, but it's worth learning about it. I would say, honestly, the pandemic has created more people to look into the reverse mortgage program than ever in my 17 years of doing it. Doesn't mean they all did it, but when their back was against the wall, they picked the phone up and said, I've had preconceived notions about this thing, but I need to learn about it and see if my preconceived notions are right or wrong. And that resulted in a very busy year and a half for me, my busiest year and a half. Just that the pandemic caused that. The uncertainty caused them to look into it.
Mhm.
If everyone knew what I knew, if all the seniors nationwide knew what I knew about reverse mortgages, millions of seniors would be doing the loan, millions of them. They just don't know. They don't know enough about it. They don't know that it's the right thing for them because they won't even entertain looking into it. So
Well, that's one of the reasons for putting this program together. I guess if we had a subtext for what we've done this afternoon is pick up the phone and ask somebody, learn about it. Mortgages, definitely, because that's in our bailiwick. There have been times in not such a distant past when we were speaking with a prospective seller, and it just wasn't right to put her home on the market right now. Because of other circumstances in her life, it just didn't make any kind of good sense to say, here, sign this now. Pick up the phone, find a good person to give you good information, a mortgage person, realtor, an organizer, an accountant, a financial advisor, an attorney, and put together the plan to get you to where you want to be. And
the thing that I would add to that is that perhaps the way that we can be of most help to our audience is in sharing that list of resources that we have. Pick up the phone and call us, because we've really made it a point to acquire a list of trusted professionals that we would send our own family to. And we'd gladly share that with you.
Well, David, MJ, Andrew, Lynn, thank you so much. This has been very, very informative. And know that this program has been recorded. I hope you didn't say anything you didn't want anybody to hear. And I will send you the link as soon as it's up on YouTube.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Nice meeting you.
Very nice to see everybody.